Now, we have been moved out and we've been staying at my parents' house ever since we left our home. Now, my parents have actually been on vacation in Puerto Rico visiting family and friends. And I decided that before they came back, I wanted to give them a little surprise. Hey there, my name is Yami. I am your Latina next door. Welcome back to Mi Casa, where I share all things home decor and DIY on a budget. We are currently staying at my parents' house for a few weeks before we head up to our new property. During this time, I thought it would be great to tackle a few things in my parents' home that needed updating. I was a military brat growing up, so I lived in many places, but this is the house where my father ended up retiring. I ended up graduating high school and then going off to college. And unfortunately, not much has changed with the bathroom that I used when I used to live here. Now, this bathroom is also the bathroom that my parents use for guests whenever they come visiting from out of state or Puerto Rico. And they usually always have guests staying over. This is honestly a builder grade bathroom. The bathroom consists of simple laminate countertops, builder grade lighting and a mirror. It also had melamine cabinets and linoleum flooring. Now, I have to confess that fuchsia color on the wall was totally me when I used to live here. Of course, that was way before I knew anything about design. So forgive me on that one. Now, pretty much the only thing that happened after I moved out was that my mom had a couple of the walls painted beige so that the fuchsia wouldn't be so powerful. However, it didn't really do much to update the space as far as wall colors go. Now, my husband and I did help install a brand new faucet and sink into the space, as well as a new toilet a few years ago. Other than that, pretty much everything else has been the same for about 20 plus years. Now, while we were moving out of our home and moving into this one, my parents were actually in Puerto Rico visiting family. And I thought it would be great to get started on this project while my parents were still on vacation. So this is what I planned for the space. So I got to work right away and created a mood board. I wanted to create a very light and sophisticated feel in that bathroom using as much of what I had, including the wicker pieces that were already in the space. I thought it would be great to bring in my mirror. As you can see, I had the opportunity to take it with me from the home that I was living in, and I thought what a great place to have it here at my parents' house where both my parents and we can enjoy it whenever we come visit. So bringing those two elements in and then just lightening the space completely. Honestly, it's always felt very dark. There is no window in that bathroom, and with the darker colors over time, it just felt like a cave. So I wanted to make it as light and bright as possible. All right, so this is what everything looks like. And this wallpaper, I am so in love with it. It is from Home Depot. It is peel and stick, so I'm excited to use this. It's very durable and heavy, and I'm kind of glad I went with it. It's the more traditional style, which honestly I'm loving. I would love to have this in my house. So I went with this, and my mom loves color, but I wanted to go with a neutral backdrop because she loves changing accessories out for the season. So if I kept everything nice and neutral, she can literally pair this with any color that she wants. And, she'll have a wide variety to choose from whenever changing out her accessories. So that's kind of why I went with this neutral palette. This contact paper right here is from Amazon. She wanted me to address the bottom inside of the cabinet while she was gone. It's just stained, it's scratched up, it's not looking very pretty anymore. And you guys know that I love lining the insides of my cabinets with contact paper. I ordered this on Amazon. I'll link to it below as well. I wanted to try this wood grain color. It looked really pretty online, so I'm hoping it looks pretty in person when I lay it out, and I think it'll go well with everything else. This curtain I decided to go with is very similar to the one that I had in my master bathroom in the last house. The reason I liked it, one, it goes very well with this, and honestly, I just really love the style. But two, my mom really did enjoy it. She thought it was really pretty. I decided to go with a plain instead of the stripes because I had this pattern going on and I kind of wanted to keep it simple and give her something a little bit different. So I went with this one. as far as wall color and cabinet color. Now I'm going with crushed ice for the walls and Keystone Gray for the cabinet. Now, if you look here, the crushed ice goes really pretty with some of the lighter portions that are on the flowers, and the Keystone matches amazingly, like with the darker portions of the flowers. So that's kind of what I went with in this. And I did want it to look a little bit warmer, not too cold. And the reason I decided to go with a darker color for the cabinet was because the countertop is white and we don't have enough time or, money in the budget right now to replace it. So I figured adding a darker color from the cabinet will really separate it from the countertop and just make it look so much better overall. Now, I did decide to change the hardware to black. I think it would look really nice and custom and, just trying to get away from that builder grade look. And then to add a little bit of color, I found these at Hobby Lobby, and it's a beautiful green color and it has like the vines going up it. It was only $9.99 and it was half off because it was table decor. So this was a really beautiful find. I found this along with the little cup for like the toothbrushes. So that way she can have this and we can replace the ones that she's got going on right now. And I think she'll appreciate it because it is a little bit of color. So this is what we're working with and we're about to get started. Now, honestly, the first thing we needed to do was remove everything from the space. Now, those before images that I shared previously were pretty packed with lots of stuff. And that's because, again, we had just moved in here while my parents were away, and we just kind of dropped all our things and all of our toiletries, and we're kind of living in it, in survival mode. But here, I was able to go in all the cabinets and just clean everything out that wasn't used, was expired, and we honestly didn't need to have in the bathroom while we stayed here at my parents'. And honestly, there was things in here that I'm pretty sure my mom didn't even know existed. So I know I didn't get rid of anything that was super important. Now, once I did, I gave the cabinet a nice cleaning. Once I was done with the cabinet cleaning, I began to remove absolutely everything from the rest of the bathroom. Now you might notice that I'm wearing two different shoes, and it's because I'm actually walking around with a broken toe in this video. Now, probably one of the happiest moments during this entire demo was when my husband removed this cabinet because I have been trying to get rid of it for years. And it basically fell apart when he removed it. Now the next thing I did was add contact paper underneath the cabinet. I needed to put some of the stuff that we were actually using back underneath the cabinet because we didn't have anywhere else to put it. So I went ahead and tackled this next. I ordered this one from Amazon, and I'll try to do my best to link everything that I used in this bathroom makeover in my description box below. Now, the back wall only had these two towel racks, which were not efficient at all. And when all the grandkids would be over, there was just not enough towel space. So my husband removed those and I filled them in with some spackle. Now, before we can paint the walls, we had to remove that large mirror from the wall. Next, it was time to remove the mirror, and Nelson taped up the mirror and he began wedging shims behind it in order to pull it away from the wall in one piece. And he was pretty successful. It came out pretty easily. Of course, we had some patchwork to do behind it, but we were glad that it didn't shatter. After all the spackle was dry from the towel racks, I began to sand them nice and smooth. Then it was time to remove that hideous light fixture above the mirror. So my parents have owned this house for about 20 years now, and this is the first time opening this up. And the reason why these three lights have never worked is because they have never been connected to the power source. Imagine that. The things you find when you start demoing. We thought it was kind of funny actually, because we always wondered why those two right lights were never on or could never turn on. Anyways, so next was the paint, and we are using Captivate by Sherwin-Williams. It's actually a very good line of paint. It's their lowest, most inexpensive, but It works very well, and it's up there with the Super Paint. So we've actually switched to this one because it's cheaper and it covers just as well, as you can see right here. I mean, that's the first coat and it's going on a fuchsia behind it, and you can see it does great coverage. However, I don't recommend just doing one coat. Make sure you always do two. And we are using satin because this is a bathroom, and honestly, I love using satin all the time because I have little kids and it's so easy to wipe away. Now, I did have to bring in my lighting in here since our light fixture was down because we were painting the walls. But I did want you to see the difference between this color and the color that was already on there. And while it looks light, you can see that this is that much lighter as well. And you'll see the huge impact it will take on this bathroom by just lightening these walls and giving it more of a neutral tone. Now, something else that I like to do whenever I paint a room is always paint the baseboards and any trim that's in the space. A lot of times previous painters don't do as good of a job, and sometimes you do get little pieces of paint here and there where you just need to cover it up, and doing so makes everything look brand new, which is why I always choose to do it. I'm using Sherwin-Williams Emerald Enamel Urethane Paint. It's what I use for cabinets, and it's in the semi-gloss and in high hide white. Alright, so once the trim was painted, it was off to prime the cabinet. And what I'm using here is Sensor Cover Stain Primer, and it is an oil-based primer. You will need to do that if you do wish to paint any of your melamine builder grade cabinets. This creates an incredible seal, and it will create a very nice bonding surface for your paint to go on and actually stay on. Keep in mind, you will have to wear a mask because it does have a strong odor. Of course, the final and the most cumbersome part of this makeover was the floor. Again, we didn't have time or the budget to replace the floor. Of course, it would have been a lot of demo and grouting and all that stuff, and we honestly didn't have the time. The linoleum, despite the fact that it was yellowed and just stained from over 20 years of usage, was still intact and in good condition. So I thought I'd go ahead and paint over it, give it a huge makeover, and use some stenciling to create a faux tile look. And I think it turned out pretty amazing. Now here you can see all of that yellowing and discoloration on the floor. And since I had just painted the cabinet with a primer and had it out, I went ahead and made sure I cleaned the floor and then added the primer to the floor as well. Now, if you wish to do this as well, I would suggest that once you prime your floor, nobody goes back into the bathroom before you paint it with your next paint. And the reason I'm saying is because I still had other things to do, and because this primer is so sticky, everything adheres to it. So will any dirt or anything that you might have on your shoes. So just keep that in mind. Once you prime your floors, you want to be ready to paint as soon as it's completely dry. Alright, so the primer is dry on the cabinet, and I am going in with my Keystone Gray color from Sherwin-Williams. Again, this is using the Emerald Urethane Enamel Paint that I always use for cabinetry, and it is in semi-gloss. I'm going through all of the edges, and then I'm going in with a 4-inch roller to get full coverage, and I am doing 2 coats. Then it was back to the wall. We had quite a bit of drywall that needed to be patched up behind the mirror, and it took a while for all of the spackle to dry. So once that was dry, I came back in, sanded it all, and painted it the same color as the rest of the wall. Now I will be applying peel and stick wallpaper here, but I did want everything to be nice and even underneath because it was going to be white wallpaper that I was adhering to it. Then it was time to address the wicker pieces that were in the space. As you can see, they were painted white, which is something that I did do whenever I painted the bathroom fuchsia, but over the years they got a little bit beat up. So I decided to bring them back to their more original hue. I thought bringing them darker, since everything else was so light, would give a nice contrast, plus it would make it look a little bit more like wicker again. So while I was working out there on those, my walls had dried and they were finally ready for the wallpaper. Now I wanted there to be wallpaper on the back wall where the toilet and the sink was, and I love using this peel and stick wallpaper. But full disclosure, what I don't love is the fact that the pattern doesn't always necessarily match 100%. But overall, I am still satisfied with how it turned out. This is something that requires a lot of patience, and the best part of it is that once you're done with it, you can just peel it off because it is like a very thick, high quality contact paper. Nelson installed the light fixture for me, and I began adding the glass and the light bulbs. We are nearing the end. Now, once the light was back on and shining, it made the old caulk residue that was on the counter a lot more noticeable. So I came in with my box cutter and removed all of the old caulk that had been there. At this point, I was ready to get back on and focus on the floors. And as you can see, what I mentioned earlier, there was some markings and some footprints all over where I had primed because it's just so sticky. So I came back in and began to paint it. Now I've done tutorials on how to paint your floors previously. Now what I'm doing here is my original method that I have posted on my blog, and I can link to that if you guys want to check it out. But the reason I am not doing the version that I've done here on YouTube is because I didn't want to go out and buy another set of paint. I wanted to use what I had on hand, and this works just fine. I am using the same trim paint for all of my trim and baseboards on this floor. It is urethane enamel paint, and it will harden over time. Now I am using a stencil from Cutting Edge, and I will link to this exact stencil in my description box so you can check it out. I did do 3 coats of white paint on the floor before I began to do this. Now, in order to create the stencil, what I'm doing is I'm using the wall paint that I had left over for the stencil pattern. Again, that is what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to use the paint that I already have in different methods instead of going out and buying something specifically for the floor. Now for this, you will have to seal it, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So to give you guys an overview of what I do whenever I stencil, I do always like to have more than one stencil on hand. As I'm alternating stencils, I do like to place the used one on a piece of paper towel, so if there's any paint behind it, it gets soaked up with the paper towel while I'm working on the other one. I like to set the previous stencil with a dryer so that it doesn't mess up my next placement of my stencil. When picking up paint from your roller, you don't need a lot of paint, and you want to remove as much of it as you can on a paper plate before applying it to your stencil. Make sure your stencil aligns and use some tape so that it doesn't move. Now here's a progress shot. I did all of the inside of the pattern, and then I moved on to the borders. What I like to do is I like to add a couple of pieces of paper to the wall. Now, once the stencil is aligned, I like to put some tape down and just naturally push the roller over it until it stops naturally on the wall. You will see that the paint will stop on its own in a very even manner, and you don't have to cut or manipulate the stencil at all whatsoever to get a nice finish on that very edge. If you get any paint on the wall or the trim, just remove it with a damp cloth and then set your stencil. Now I have an old and a very long video on how to stencil. However, I'm thinking that maybe an updated and very condensed video on how to stencil properly with all of my best tips and tricks might actually help. Let me know if you are interested in me putting that together so you have just one video to reference every time you need help with stenciling. The final step, of course, is to seal, and I am using a polycrylic in a semi-gloss, and I am applying 3 coats to this in order to get a good seal. Then after all the painting had been done, it was time to put everything back together. I found several items in Hobby Lobby and Big Lots and even Target to include in this space. And I even got to bring another DIY project that I shared in my last house and put it over here. The new towel rack is from Kirkland's. I got this greenery stems from Hobby Lobby. I also found these jars at Hobby Lobby for $4. And for my previous Trash to Treasure DIY video, I was able to incorporate one of these shelves that I had redone in my last house, and I thought it would be perfect to add above the toilet since I no longer had that cabinet there. I found this wastebasket at Target, which I loved because it had this plastic insert, which is, by the way, perfect for those Home Depot bags that you'll be throwing away. You might as well reuse them. I used some felt pads from Dollar Tree to go underneath my wicker pieces so that they wouldn't damage the floor. And I used some plastic containers that I found at Big Lots to organize it even more. Now, before I share the final reveal, I want to go back so that you can see what the before was. And here is how it turned out.
Oh my god!
Oh, that's what you guys been doing. We're getting...
We were hoping you liked
Oh
it.
my god, it's beautiful, Nana!
There, look.
Thank you, thank you.
Mama,
thank
you know right
Mine
here?
is next, mine is next.
Mama.
Well, my friends, that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below which part of the bathroom transformation was your favorite. My parents really like this space, and I hope all their guests do whenever they come and visit them. I'm really excited that I was finally able to update this space and make it look so much more beautiful, and honestly, it's just so much more inviting now. Now, I will be working on another project for my parents coming up in the next few weeks, and I will be sharing that with you all as well. Thank you all, as always, for sticking around and watching, and I will see you all in the next home decor and DIY video. Until then, adios!